On a bright Montana morning, a German shepherd led a former Navy SEAL off an empty road and into the snow. There, Travis Keene found an elderly man exhausted beneath a pine tree, still insisting he had 17 orange posts left to check. Travis thought the rescue would end the moment the old man was warm, safe, and back in town. Instead, those 17 markers led him to a winter shelter kept alive by people who knew what it meant to have nowhere else to go. The deeper Travis stepped into Northstar, the harder it became to ignore a truth he had hidden for years. He knew how to save people, but not how to stay with them. And with Morrow quietly choosing connection over obedience, Travis began to wonder whether the lost man in the snow had ever really been Harlan. Tell us where you're watching from, and please like and subscribe to help Valor and Paw Stories reach 1,000 subscribers and keep these stories coming.
January had polished the Bitterroot foothills until they looked almost unreal. Fresh snow lay over Old Lantern Road in long white shoulders, untouched beyond the tire ruts Travis Keene had made on the way up. Sunlight struck the drifts hard enough to make him squint even behind polarized lenses. Above the dark green pines, the Montana sky had that sharp winter blue that suggested nothing bad could possibly happen beneath it. Travis had never trusted weather that looked too clean. He guided his pickup around a slow bend, one hand resting loosely on the wheel. Morrow sat in the passenger seat. The 6-year-old German shepherd had spent most of the morning half asleep, muzzle pointed toward the heater vent, black saddle dark against the worn gray upholstery. A small golden mark above his right eye made him look permanently skeptical. His left ear tipped slightly outward whenever he listened closely, which was often. "You did nothing up there," Travis said.
Morrow opened one amber-brown eye. "I fixed the generator. You watched." The eye closed again. Travis almost smiled. Almost. The weather station repair had taken less than 2 hours. A frozen fuel line, cracked connector, dirty relay. Simple work. The kind Travis liked. Machines did not hide what was wrong. They complained in measurable ways. A voltage dropped. A bearing screamed. A seal leaked. You found the problem, corrected it, tested the result, and moved on. People had a way of asking you to stay after the work was done. Travis preferred machinery. At 50, he still carried the shape of a man who had once lived by physical readiness, though his strength had settled into something less polished and more practical. Broad shoulders filled the olive-drab body of the combat shirt he still wore under a deep forest green work jacket. Camouflage sleeves showed at the wrists where the jacket cuffs had ridden up.
His chestnut hair was turning silver at the temples, and a faint scar near his right eyebrow caught the light whenever he turned his head. The old Navy habits remained in fragments. Check the road ahead, check the mirrors, know the fuel level, notice where the snow looked too soft. But Travis no longer thought of himself as a man waiting for danger. Most days, he was simply trying to get to the next repair before something else broke. They were halfway back to Silver Pine when Morrow sat up. Not gradually. One moment the dog was relaxed. The next, all 4 paws were braced, head angled toward the passenger window. Travis glanced at him. "What?" Morrow stared into a stand of widely spaced lodgepole pine. There was nothing there. A buried fence line. Wind-scoured trunks, sunlight. Morrow made a low sound in his throat. Not a growl, not quite a whine. Then he pawed once at the door. Travis slowed. "No." Morrow pawed it again. Travis drove another 20 yards before pressing the brake. The truck stopped in the middle of empty road. He looked at the dog. You know, this is why people think you're smarter than me. Morrow stared back. Travis shifted into park. I'm checking so you can be wrong. The dog was already waiting at the door. The snow off the road came nearly to Travis's knees in places. He zipped his jacket higher and followed Morrow through the trees. The shepherd did not run. That was what changed Travis's mood. If Morrow had caught an animal scent, he would have moved with quick, elastic excitement. If he had heard something threatening, his body would have lowered and tightened. Instead, Morrow walked with deliberate purpose. 10 yards, 20, then farther. Travis checked the truck behind them, still visible. He continued. At perhaps 100 yards, Morrow stopped beside a shallow depression and sniffed the air. Find something? The dog moved again. Travis began noticing signs he should have seen sooner, a break in the crust of snow, a drag mark near a stump, one shallow footprint almost erased by blowing powder, then another. His irritation vanished. Morrow! The shepherd looked back. Travis pointed forward. Go! Morrow accelerated. By the time Travis reached the next opening between the trees, the dog had stopped beside a man. An old man. He was sitting against the trunk of a ponderosa pine as though he had simply decided to rest there. For half a second, the stillness of the same disturbed Travis more than panic would have. The man wore a mustard-brown parka crusted with snow along one side. A burgundy knit cap sat crooked on thin white hair. One boot was planted badly in front of him, the sole separating from the upper near the toe. His face was pale beneath a short white-gray beard. His eyes were open. Travis crouched. Sir? The man blinked, then looked toward Morrow. Well, he murmured, you're not who I expected. His voice was weak but coherent. That makes two of us. Travis removed one glove and touched 2 fingers to the side of the man's neck. Pulse present, slow but steady enough. Name? Harlan. Last name? A pause. Whitcomb. Do you know where you are? Harlan looked around at the trees. Unfortunately. Travis almost laughed, which reassured him more than any answer on a checklist. He opened the small emergency pack he carried even on routine repair jobs. You hurt anywhere? Pride. Anything useful? My ankle complains, nothing broken. Travis checked anyway. No obvious deformity, no serious bleeding. Harlan's hands were cold, his movements slow, and exhaustion had begun taking the place of useful judgment. Travis unfolded a reflective emergency blanket and wrapped it around him beneath the open front of the parka. Morrow sat close to Harlan's left side, not touching him, just there. Harlan looked at the dog for several seconds. Good-looking animal. Morrow. That his name? Yes. Appropriate. Travis did not ask what that meant. He began securing the loose sole of Harlan's boot with tape from his pack. Then Harlan turned his head sharply toward the northeast. No. Travis glanced up. No what? The posts. What posts? Orange. Harlan lifted one hand as if pointing, but the gesture drifted. Need to finish. Travis watched him carefully. Cold affected judgment long before it stole consciousness. How long have you been out here? Harlan ignored the question. 17 left. There aren't any posts here. Yes, there are. Not one's worth freezing over. Harlan pushed one hand against the tree and tried to stand. The movement was so sudden that Travis caught him under the arm before he could fall forward. Morrow rose at the same instant, not barking, not lunging. The German shepherd simply stepped directly into Harlan's path and planted himself there. Harlan stared down at him. Morrow stared back.
For a strange moment, the old man and the dog seemed to reach an agreement that excluded Travis entirely. Then Harlan let his weight settle again. Travis lowered him carefully to the snow. "Good," Travis said. "We're done experimenting." Harlan breathed through his nose. 17. Travis tightened the blanket around him. "You can hate me from inside a heated truck." Something changed in Harlan's expression. Not surrender, calculation. "You always this pleasant?" "Only on service calls." That earned the faintest movement at one corner of Harlan's mouth. Morrow sat down again. The shepherd leaned just enough for his shoulder to touch Harlan's leg. Harlan's hand slowly lowered to the thick fur at Morrow's neck. Travis noticed the gesture because Morrow usually chose when he was touched. This time, he did not move away. Getting Harlan back to the road took almost 40 minutes. Travis supported most of his weight through the deeper snow, while Morrow moved ahead, then circled back repeatedly as if checking their progress. Halfway to the truck, Travis noticed a thin line of red on the snow. He stopped. Morrow's front left paw had been cut somewhere beneath the crust. Not badly. Still, Travis felt an immediate flash of annoyance directed at himself. He had been watching Harlan. He should have watched the dog, too. "Morrow, hold." The shepherd stopped. Travis crouched, checked the pad, and found a narrow scrape rather than a deep cut. Harlan watched. "You worry about him. He gets injured, he tells me eventually. Unlike people." Travis looked up. Harlan's gaze had become clearer as they moved. "That's supposed to mean something?" "Not yet." Travis stood. "Good." They continued. At the truck, Travis settled Harlan in the passenger seat and made Morrow ride in the back, which the dog clearly considered an insult. Once the heater was running, Travis called Silver Pine Emergency Services. Naomi Kincaid answered before dispatch transferred him. Her voice sharpened the moment Travis gave the name. "Harlan Whitcomb?" "That's what he says." "Where did you find him?" "Off Old Lantern, maybe 300 yards into the trees." Silence. Then Naomi said something under her breath that Travis chose not to repeat. "Bring him to the station. I'll meet you there." "You know him?" "Everybody over 40 around here knows Harlan." Travis looked at the old man. Harlan had leaned his head against the seat and closed his eyes. "That sounds ominous." "It is if he's been where I think he's been." Before Travis could ask what that meant, Naomi disconnected. He hated conversations that ended with missing information. Harlan opened one eye. "She angry?" She sounded practiced. That would be Naomi. So they did know each other. Travis pulled onto the road. Morrow rested his head between the front seats. Harlan reached back without looking and let his fingers brush the dog's muzzle. Morrow accepted this as if it were ordinary. Travis noticed. He wished he had not. Naomi Kincaid was waiting outside the Silver Pine Emergency Station when the pickup arrived. She wore a navy soft-shell jacket over gray layers, dark trousers, winter boots, and the expression of someone who had been preparing an argument during the entire drive down. Her black hair, threaded lightly with silver, was cut in an angled bob that moved sharply when she turned. She opened Harlan's door before Travis had fully stopped. "You absolute fool!" Harlan smiled weakly. "Nice to see you, too." Naomi closed her eyes for 1 second. Relief came first. Anger covered it immediately afterward. "You left no route note." "I knew the route." "You got lost." That is an unnecessarily dramatic interpretation.
You were found sitting under a tree. It was a good tree. Travis stepped away from the exchange.
This was clearly not his problem anymore. Exactly how he preferred things. A medical technician checked Harlan's temperature and vitals while Naomi continued questioning him. Harlan refused transport to the hospital. He agreed to warming, fluids, and an examination only after Naomi threatened to have Marcus Bell personally drive him there. Travis did not know Marcus Bell. Harlan apparently did. The threat worked. A short while later, Adrian Vale arrived because Travis had mentioned Morrow's paw. She came directly from her veterinary clinic, still wearing muted teal scrubs beneath a charcoal fleece. Auburn hair was tied low at the back of her neck, and she carried a compact medical bag in one hand. Morrow. The dog's tail moved once. Travis glanced down. Traitor. Adrian crouched. He remembers competent people. She examined the scrape while Travis held Morrow's collar loosely. The injury was superficial. Clean it, keep it dry, no long runs for a day or two.
Morrow endured the inspection with far more patience than he usually offered Travis. Across the room, Harlan watched. "You know the dog?" Adrian looked over. "For a few years." Harlan nodded as if this answered something important. Travis felt the first pull of impatience. Harlan was safe. Morrow was fine. The job was complete. Time to leave. He thanked Adrian, gave Naomi his number in case she needed the exact location, and collected his jacket. Harlan called after him, "Keene!" Travis turned. The old man sat wrapped in 2 station blankets, burgundy cap resting beside him. Without the hat, his white hair looked thinner and more vulnerable than it had in the woods. "Did you find me?" Travis frowned. "What? You? Did you find me?" Travis looked at Morrow. "No." Harlan followed his gaze. "The dog did." "Yes." Harlan considered that. Then he nodded once. "Then I owe him." "You don't owe either of us anything." "I didn't say I owed you." Adrian hid a smile. Naomi did not bother.
Travis shook his head and walked toward the door. Morrow followed him halfway, then stopped. Travis pushed the door open. Cold sunlight spilled across the floor. "Morrow?" The shepherd did not move. He had turned back toward Harlan. For several seconds, the room became quiet enough that Travis heard the low hum of the building heater. Harlan watched Morrow. Morrow watched Harlan. Then Harlan looked at Travis. There was humor in his face, but something else beneath it. Something Travis did not care to examine. "The dog understands staying better than you do." The words landed harder than they had any right to. Travis's expression did not change. "Good thing he's not paying the mortgage." He called Morrow again. This time the shepherd came. Outside, Travis opened the truck door and waited for him to jump in. Morrow did. But before Travis closed it, the dog turned once more toward the glass doors of the station. Harlan was still visible inside. Travis followed Morrow's gaze. Then he shut the door. He told himself the irritation would be gone by the time he reached home. It wasn't. 2 mornings later, Travis found the envelope under the side door of his workshop. It had been pushed far enough beneath the weather strip to keep the snow off, but not far enough to escape Morrow's attention. The German shepherd stood over it with one paw beside the corner, staring down as though someone had left a suspicious object on his property. Travis set his coffee on the workbench and bent to pick it up. No return address, no name. Inside was a folded paper map, old enough that several road numbers had been crossed out and rewritten by hand. A line in orange pencil followed Old Lantern Road north and then curved away into terrain Travis had always thought belonged mostly to logging access and Forest Service tracks. At the top of the map, in block letters, someone had written, 17 posts left. Travis looked at Morrow. No, Morrow sat. That is not a vote. The dog continued looking at him. Travis folded the map again. He knew exactly who had sent it. That was the problem.
Harlan Whitcomb lived in a modest one-story house near the western edge of Silverpine, where the streets widened and the mountains seemed to lean closer to town. A shoveled path led from the driveway to a green front door. Travis had just raised his hand to knock when the door opened. A woman carrying a covered soup pot almost walked into him. "Well," she said, "you're either here to apologize or confiscate something." She was in her mid-50s, compact and strong-looking, with dark blonde hair streaked silver and tied low behind her neck. A burgundy bandana was looped loosely at her collar. She wore a faded blue cotton shirt beneath a quilted vest, and there was flour on one sleeve. Travis stepped aside. "Neither." "Then you're disappointing already." She shifted the pot to one hip. "Beck Moran." "Travis Keene." "I know." Of course she did. Silverpine was small enough that anonymity was mostly something people pretended to have. Beck nodded at Morrow. "And I know you." Morrow accepted this without ceremony. From inside the house, Harlan called, "If you're feeding him, make him take the soup home." Beck raised her voice. "I'm feeding you." "Same difference." She looked back at Travis. "He's been impossible since 1978. Don't take it personally." Then she walked past him toward an old SUV and left before he could decide whether he liked her. Harlan was seated at a kitchen table covered in papers. He looked better than he had at the emergency station. Color had returned to his face. His white-gray beard was trimmed badly enough to suggest he had done it himself. He wore a blue-gray flannel shirt beneath a faded navy wool vest, and a red carpenter's pencil rested behind his right ear. His left ankle was wrapped. Travis placed the envelope on the table. "You dropped something." Harlan glanced at it. "No, I sent something." "I noticed." "Good. Eyes are useful." Travis pulled out a chair but did not sit. "You nearly froze because of those posts." "That's imprecise. You got lost checking them." "That's more accurate. And now you want me to finish the job." Harlan poured coffee from a glass carafe. "I wanted you to know why I was out there. You could have called." "You would have answered?" Travis said nothing. Harlan took that as confirmation. Morrow wandered into the kitchen, sniffed once at the edge of the table, then settled near the radiator. Travis opened the map. "Orange reflectors? Fiberglass posts, 48 inches, reflective bands near the top. What are they marking?" "A route." "To what?" Harlan leaned back slightly. "Northstar Winter House." The name meant something to Travis, though only vaguely. He had heard it mentioned by truckers during storms and once over county radio after a highway closure. He had assumed it was a privately owned lodge. "It's still open?" "Usually." "That sounds reassuring." Harlan ignored the remark. Beck had left the soup uncovered on the counter before leaving. Steam rose slowly from the pot, filling the room with the smell of chicken, thyme, and pepper. Travis looked at the map again. The route ran beyond a section of Old Lantern Road that the county no longer plowed regularly. What exactly is Northstar? A shelter? What kind? The kind with heat. Travis looked up. Harlan sighed. Travelers, utility crews, hunters, delivery drivers, search teams,
Anyone who gets stranded between Silver Pine and the eastern passes when the weather turns. Official? Depends what you mean. County funded? No. State licensed? No. Then who operates it? Harlan's expression changed very slightly. People. Travis waited. Harlan did not elaborate. That answer told him more than the old man probably intended. How many? This winter? Harlan reached for his coffee. Not enough. Travis stared at him. There it was, the part he disliked. Not the cold, not the old road, not even the stupidity of a 79-year-old man walking a snow route alone. The sentence beneath all of it. Someone has to. That sentence had ruined a lot of good judgment in Travis's life. How long have you been doing this? Northstar opened 38 years ago. I asked about the posts. So did I. Travis felt his patience thin. You've been walking that route every winter for almost 4 decades? Not always alone. But this year you were. Harlan looked toward the window. Outside, sunlight glazed the snow on the backyard fence. People get older. People move. Some die. Some decide they've done enough. And you didn't. Harlan's jaw tightened. Travis saw it then. Not martyrdom, exactly. Something more ordinary and more dangerous. Habit. Responsibility carried so long it had stopped feeling optional. You should have called somebody. Harlan met his eyes. I did. Who? 3 people. And? One had pneumonia. One was in Helena with his wife. One said he'd come next week. Harlan lifted one shoulder. The snow came first. Travis folded the map sharply. Then you wait. And if someone takes the road before then? The road should be closed. It isn't always. Then the county should mark it. The county marks the routes it owns. Then whoever runs Northstar should. Harlan's voice remained quiet. I run Northstar. Travis let out a short breath. That's the problem. Harlan did not argue. He simply asked, if I don't go, who does? The question landed with exactly the wrong tone, too calm, too familiar. Travis had heard versions of it before, in places much farther from Montana. Who else is going? Who else can? Who else knows how? He hated the way those questions made recklessness sound moral. Don't do that. Harlan frowned. Do what? Turn bad planning into duty? For the first time, Harlan looked offended. Travis pushed the map across the table. You needed people. You didn't have people, so you went alone. That doesn't make it noble. It wasn't supposed to be noble. Good. Travis stood. It was supposed to get done. That's worse. The room went still. Morrow lifted his head. Harlan studied Travis for a long moment. Then, instead of defending himself, he looked down at the table. That quiet response unsettled Travis more than another argument would have. He had expected stubbornness. He had not expected the possibility that Harlan already knew he was right. Travis turned toward the door. Behind him, Harlan said, Keep the map. No. You may need it. I won't. You brought it here. To return it, then return it. Travis looked down. The map was still in his hand. He put it on the kitchen counter and left. Morrow followed him outside. Almost. At the edge of the porch, the shepherd stopped. Travis opened the truck. Morrow? The dog turned his head back toward the house. No scratching, no refusal, no dramatic stance.
He simply stood there, listening to something Travis could not hear. Then Harlan appeared behind the glass door. The old man did not wave.
Morrow watched him for 2 or 3 seconds before finally jumping into the truck. Travis closed the door harder than necessary. 3 days passed. Travis repaired a snowblower, replaced a starter motor in a county utility truck, and spent an afternoon rewiring a backup generator for a motel. He did not think about Northstar, at least not intentionally. Then Naomi Kincaid walked into his workshop at 4:30 on Thursday, carrying her bright orange clipboard. That color irritated him immediately. "You're busy?" she asked. "Yes." "Good. Then you know how to prioritize." Travis was elbow deep in the side panel of a generator. "What do you want?" "An assessment." "No, I haven't explained it. You drove here." Naomi leaned against the workbench. Morrow emerged from beneath a desk where he had been sleeping. Naomi acknowledged him with a nod. "Morrow." The dog wagged once. Travis wiped his hands on a rag. "If this is about Harlan, it is about Northstar." Same answer. "No, it isn't." She placed a document on the bench. Northstar, she explained, was not an official county facility, but it had been used for decades as a supplemental winter shelter. During road closures, dispatchers sometimes directed stranded adults there when returning to Silver Pine was less safe than continuing forward. Utility crews used it during prolonged outages. Search teams staged from its garage when storms blocked higher routes. No one pretended the arrangement was ideal, but Montana contained many arrangements that existed because ideal solutions were too far away. "The county isn't taking it over," Travis said. "No." "Then why are you here?" "Because if the route markers and basic systems don't pass review this winter, we remove Northstar from the emergency reference map next season." Travis looked at her. "What systems?" "Generator, radio repeater, heat backup, signage, staffing." "Staffing isn't a system. It is when no one shows up." She let that sit. Travis looked toward the open bay door. Afternoon sunlight slanted across the packed snow outside. Naomi lowered her voice. "I'm not asking you to run it." "Good. I'm asking for 1 day." He said nothing. "Technical assessment only. You tell us what's unsafe, what's repairable, what isn't. Harlan stays with us. You don't inherit a cause." That last sentence was deliberate. Travis looked at her. Naomi met his stare without apology. "You know exactly why I said it." He hated that she did. Morrow came over and rested his chin briefly against Travis's thigh. Travis sighed. 1 day. Naomi nodded. 1 day. No scheduling, no volunteer management, no committee. I didn't say committee. You were thinking it. I'm always thinking committee. That was the closest Naomi came to smiling. They started the following morning. Harlan rode in Naomi's county SUV until Old Lantern Road narrowed, then transferred into Travis's pickup with Morrow. Travis had expected him to protest the arrangement. He did not. Harlan wore his mustard-brown parka, burgundy cap, and a new pair of winter boots. A wooden trekking stick lay across his knees. Travis noticed it. Harlan noticed Travis noticing. "Say nothing." "I didn't." "You were about to." "I wasn't." "You have a very loud face." They drove another mile. The first orange post appeared beside the road, leaning almost flat beneath the snow. Harlan tapped the dashboard. "There." Travis stopped. The work was simple. Dig, pull, reset, pack snow, check reflector angle. At the 5th post, Travis replaced a cracked one from the bundle in the truck bed. At the 9th, Harlan scraped ice away from a faded reflective strip with his glove. At the 12th, Morrow discovered a rabbit trail and was forced to reconsider his professional priorities.
The rhythm became unexpectedly quiet. No rescue,
No argument. No urgency. Only the three of them moving slowly through the bright winter landscape. Harlan knew every bend, not in the sentimental way old men sometimes claim to know roads. Precisely. This drift feels first with the west wind. That ditch looks shallow, but isn't. Don't park beneath that pine. Lost half a limb in '09. Travis began to understand that Harlan's knowledge was not nostalgia. It was infrastructure stored in a person. At post 14, Travis stood back and looked down the route. The orange markers were small against all that white. Almost ridiculous. One every few hundred yards. Yet once he noticed them, his eyes began automatically searching for the next. Then the next. Harlan was 30 feet away, tamping snow around a replacement. Travis looked farther ahead. Another orange band caught the sun, and another beyond it. A simple chain through the winter. Not directions exactly, more like reassurance. You are still on the way. That thought stayed with him longer than he wanted. They finished the 17 before sunset. Harlan checked the final post twice. That's it. You sure? No. Travis stared at him. Harlan smiled. Yes. The road narrowed beyond that point, climbing through heavy timber. They continued another 20 minutes. Then the trees opened. Northstar Winter House stood beneath a broad shelf of snow. It was smaller than Travis expected. A long, aging timber lodge with a steep roof, stone chimney, attached garage, and a porch buried nearly to the lower rail. One shutter hung slightly crooked. A snowcat sat beneath a lean-to beside the building. Nothing about the place suggested mystery. Nothing suggested wealth. It looked used, maintained unevenly, necessary. Above the front door, one yellow lamp was already glowing in the approaching blue of evening. Travis stopped the truck. For a moment, no one spoke. Harlan looked toward the lodge, but did not say, "There it is," or anything similarly dramatic. He only exhaled. Morrow stood between the front seats. Then the shepherd gave one sharp wag of his tail. The instant Travis opened the door, Morrow jumped down. Morrow! The dog trotted through the snow toward the steps. Not uncertainly, not cautiously, with the easy confidence of an animal approaching a place where people belonged. Travis watched him reach the porch and pause beneath the yellow light. Harlan opened his own door more slowly. That, Travis said, is going to become annoying. Harlan leaned on his trekking stick as he stepped down. What is? Everyone acting like the dog knows more than I do. Harlan looked toward Morrow. Could stop proving them right. Travis shut the truck door. Then he looked at the lodge again. At the chimney, the garage, the worn steps, and the small yellow lamp above the entrance, burning before darkness had fully arrived. 17 orange posts had led them there. For the first time, Travis understood why someone might walk too far into winter trying to make sure another person could find the way. He still thought Harlan had been reckless. He still had no intention of becoming involved. Both things could be true. Morrow waited at the top of the steps. Travis followed. Northstar Winter House looked smaller from the inside than it had from the road. The front door opened directly into a broad common room with mismatched wooden tables, 2 couches that had survived several decades of different upholstery, and a stone fireplace that took up most of one wall. The place smelled faintly of pine cleaner, old coffee, wool blankets, and wood smoke. Nothing matched.
Nothing had been chosen for appearance, yet almost everything looked as if someone had repaired it rather than thrown it away. Travis noticed that immediately. A chair with a new brace under one leg, a cabinet fitted with a different-colored hinge, a section of floor patched with boards that did not quite match the rest. To most people, those would have been flaws. To Travis, they were a record of decisions. Someone had looked at each broken thing and said, "Not yet." Harlan stamped snow from his boots. "Kitchen's through there, bunks upstairs, garage on the west side." Travis did not answer.
He was already looking at the electrical outlets. Half were newer grounded receptacles, half were not. That was never a good sign. Morrow moved ahead through the common room, nose working, but without the restless energy he showed in unfamiliar places. The shepherd paused beside a stack of folded wool blankets, inspected an old boot dryer, then stood beneath a wall-mounted radio speaker as static cracked quietly through it. Travis followed the sound. The radio console occupied a desk in one corner. 2 handheld units sat charging beside a base station that looked old enough to have opinions. "Please tell me that isn't your primary communication setup." "It works." Travis looked at Harlan. "That sentence should be illegal." A deep laugh came from the adjoining hallway. A large man stepped into the room carrying 4 snow shovels over one shoulder. "Been telling him that for years." Marcus Bell filled a doorway without trying. He was around Travis's age, perhaps a little taller, broad through the chest, and heavier in a way that suggested decades of lifting tires, chains, and road equipment rather than gym work. His close-cropped black hair was threaded with silver, and a handheld radio hung from his left shoulder. The high-visibility winter jacket he wore made him impossible to miss. Marcus set the shovels against the wall. "Marcus Bell, County Road Maintenance." "Travis Keene." "I know." Travis looked at Harlan. "Does anybody around here not know me?" Marcus smiled. "Plenty. They're just not here." Harlan ignored them both and headed toward the garage. Marcus watched him go. "You brought him back alive." "Morrow did most of it." Marcus glanced at the shepherd. "Then I'll thank the competent one." Morrow accepted a scratch beneath the chin. Travis was beginning to detect a pattern. The garage revealed more problems. A 20-year-old snowcat sat near the far bay door with its engine cover open. Beside it were shelves of tow straps, traction boards, fuel cans, road flares, hand tools, and 3 different styles of shovel. A man was crouched at the electrical panel near the workbench. He straightened when they entered. Owen Pike was lean, narrow-faced, and quick in his movements. Sandy blonde hair stood slightly out of place above a short, gray-blonde beard. A yellow voltage tester protruded from the chest pocket of his dark-tan work jacket. He looked at Travis only briefly. "Good. Someone else can tell him." Harlan sighed. "Good afternoon to you too, Owen." Owen pointed at the panel. "This should have been replaced 3 years ago." "It was inspected." "By who?" "Someone licensed." "Someone tired." Travis stepped closer. The panel was functional. That did not mean he liked it. He checked the labeling. Several circuits had been added over time. A newer heater circuit ran beside older wiring. The generator transfer setup had clearly been modified more than once. "How often does it trip?" Owen answered before Harlan could. "Winter? Enough." Harlan folded his arms. "Usually when someone plugs 3 heaters into the east room at once." "That is what protection systems are supposed to account for. We've managed—" Owen gave a short laugh. "There. That phrase." Harlan's expression hardened. "What phrase?"
"We've managed." Owen tapped the panel with one finger. "You say it every time something needs replacing." "We don't have unlimited money." "I know that." "You quote commercial-grade equipment like we do. Because people sleep here." The garage seemed to contract around the silence that followed. Travis stayed out of it, at least for several seconds. Then he asked, "When was the last load calculation done?" Owen looked at him. "Exactly." Harlan looked less impressed. Travis crouched beside the lower conduit. "You've added heating circuits, charging stations, probably kitchen equipment." "2 freezers," Owen said. "Medical refrigerator."
Garage outlets. And the old transfer equipment is still sized for the original load. Yes, Harlan rubbed one hand over his beard. We upgraded in stages. That's the issue, Travis said. Harlan turned toward him. I thought you were evaluating. I am. It sounds like you've joined his side. There shouldn't be sides in an electrical panel. Marcus laughed from behind them. Owen did not. He was still angry. Not theatrical anger, the tired kind. I offered to organize the upgrade last winter, Owen said. Labor donated, supplier discount, we had people. Harlan's eyes narrowed. We didn't have the cash. We had enough for phase 1. And then what? Then we did phase 2 when we could. That leaves an unfinished system. It leaves a safer system. Harlan's voice sharpened. And when phase 2 never came? Owen stared at him. That's not always why things stop here. No one spoke. Owen removed the voltage tester from his pocket and set it on the workbench. Sometimes people stop offering because you make them feel like they're borrowing your job. That changed the room. Travis looked at Harlan. Harlan's face did not show surprise, which meant he had heard some version of it before. Owen picked up his tool bag. It's not always the money, Harlan. He passed him near the door. You don't let people do things. Then he walked out. The garage door shut behind him. Marcus looked at the floor. Harlan stared at the electrical panel. Travis had expected Northstar's problem to be simple. Old facility, not enough volunteers, too much winter. Those were manageable. But this was different. A system could fail because nobody cared. It could also fail because one person cared so much that nobody else could find room inside it. By noon, Northstar had begun filling in pieces. Not dramatically. A pickup arrived with 2 propane bottles. Marcus moved a stack of road salt. A woman from town dropped off folded towels and left before Travis learned her name. Someone carried in canned soup. Someone else took away an empty fuel drum. No one signed in. No one waited for Harlan to assign them a task. That unsettled Travis almost as much as the outdated wiring. He liked systems with ownership, clear responsibility, clear consequences. Northstar seemed held together by overlapping promises. Around 12:30, the air brakes of a semi hissed outside. A blue tractor-trailer rolled slowly into the plowed section beside the lodge. The driver stepped down carrying a dented steel thermos. He was a broad man in his early 60s, with a gray-brown mustache and the weathered red complexion of someone who had spent half his life behind glass under winter sun. "Lunch stop," he announced. Harlan looked at the clock. "You said 1 hour last time." "Still planning 1 hour. Last time was 3. That was circumstances." The man noticed Travis. "Ellis Boone." "Travis." Ellis glanced toward Morrow. "And that must be management." Morrow's tail moved once. Travis had stopped correcting people. Ellis poured coffee from his thermos, ate half a sandwich standing at the kitchen counter, then looked out the window.
Marcus was struggling with a section of damaged fence near the snowcat lean-to. Ellis sighed. There goes my hour. He put the sandwich down. Travis watched him pull on gloves and go outside without being asked. No performance, no discussion. Marcus simply handed him the other end of a rail. They worked. Harlan did not supervise. That detail mattered more than Travis expected. Adrian arrived shortly afterward, carrying a compact veterinary medical bag and a cardboard box of supplies. She had changed from clinic scrubs into a rust-colored winter jacket, dark outdoor pants, and snow boots. Her auburn hair was tied low beneath a knit cap. She found Morrow before she greeted Travis.
Pa? Fine. I'll decide that. Morrow offered her the injured foot with insulting cooperation. Adrian cleaned the small scrape, checked the pad, then opened the box she had brought. Bandages, saline, styptic powder, spare slip leads, collapsible bowls. Travis glanced at Harlan. You keep veterinary supplies? People don't stop owning animals because the highway closes. Adrian nodded toward the common room. We've had everything from hunting dogs to a house cat in a laundry basket. Cat hated everyone, Harlan said. Cat had good instincts. Morrow followed Adrian into the common room while she stocked a low cabinet near the first aid station. That was when a man came through the front door shaking badly, not from cold alone. He looked to be in his late 50s, dressed in a delivery company winter coat with wet snow clinging to his pants. Marcus came in behind him carrying a small overnight bag. Truck slid into the drainage shoulder 2 miles south, Marcus explained. Tow rig's coming. He's fine. The driver nodded too quickly. I'm fine.
Travis knew the tone. The sentence people used when their body had not yet received the message. Beck, who had arrived sometime during the electrical inspection carrying 2 trays of food, guided the man toward a chair near the fire. Coffee?
No.
Tea?
No, ma'am.
Soup? The driver shook his head. His hands would not stop trembling. Morrow crossed the room. Travis watched. The shepherd did not sniff the man's bag, did not demand attention, did not look back at Travis. He simply lowered himself beside the chair, close enough that his side touched the driver's boot. The man noticed after several seconds. His shaking did not stop immediately, but his breathing changed. One hand lowered. Fingers found the fur behind Morrow's ear. The room continued around them. Beck moved dishes. Marcus spoke into his radio. Adrian shut the cabinet. Nobody commented. That was what struck Travis.
No one turned Morrow's behavior into a moment. They let the man have it. Travis looked away first. Naomi arrived in the afternoon with her orange clipboard, and the expression Travis had learned meant paperwork was about to become his problem. She spread several pages across one of the tables. Assessment. Travis sat opposite her. The list was worse when organized. The radio repeater dropped intermittently. The backup generator worked but had failed twice under sustained load. The electrical distribution needed staged replacement. One upstairs window had moisture damage around the frame. The emergency shelter occupancy record was inconsistent. Volunteer coverage had gaps on weekdays. There was no standardized call-out procedure. The snowcat was operable but overdue for a drivetrain inspection. Travis read the pages twice. You knew most of this. Yes. Why bring me? Because Harlan knows the building, Owen knows the electrical system, Marcus knows access. I know county response. Naomi tapped the page. You don't belong to any of those arguments. That's your selling point? It is today. Harlan stood near the fireplace. How bad? Travis leaned back. It isn't unsafe enough to close today. Harlan exhaled. But that's the wrong standard.
The relief disappeared. Travis pointed at the report. If you want this place referenced for winter shelter next season, you need reliable backup power, communications, documented coverage, and a response plan that doesn't exist inside 3 people's heads. We can fix it. Travis looked toward the garage. You can fix parts of it. We. That one word made Travis still. Harlan stepped closer. We can fix it. No. Harlan frowned. You just said, I said what needs doing. And you know how. So do other people. Not all of it. Travis folded the report. I agreed to assess the place. 1 day, yes. Harlan looked toward the window, then back.
You've seen the problems. That was the point. You've seen why it matters. That wasn't. The answer came out harsher than Travis intended. Across the room, Morrow raised his head. Harlan did not push. That somehow made it worse. Travis stood. I'll give Naomi the technical priorities. Owen can handle the electrical scope. Marcus can deal with equipment. You need someone to coordinate volunteers. Harlan said quietly, And you? I go back to work. You are working. Not here. Travis picked up his jacket. The distinction mattered to him more than anyone else in the room seemed to understand. He fixed things. He did not become them. He reached the door before noticing Morrow was not behind him. Travis stopped. Morrow? Nothing. Beck looked toward the fireplace, then covered her mouth badly. Naomi did not bother hiding her smile. Travis turned. Morrow was stretched out on the hearthrug. Harlan had lowered himself into the chair beside him. The old man was not petting the shepherd. Morrow was not watching Harlan. They were simply occupying the same warm patch of room. Morrow! One amber eye opened. Travis pointed toward the door. The eye closed. Beck made a small, choking sound. Don't. I didn't say anything. You're making a sound. I'm breathing. Naomi crossed her arms. This is excellent. Travis walked back across the room. You have a home. Morrow rolled slightly onto one hip. Travis stared at him. Harlan looked innocent. I haven't touched him. I know. I haven't fed him either. That makes this worse. Travis reached down and tapped Morrow's shoulder. The dog finally stood, stretched extravagantly, and followed him toward the exit. Behind them, Beck laughed openly. Marcus joined her from the hallway. Even Naomi shook her head. Travis opened the door. Cold air swept through. Morrow stepped onto the porch and looked back once at the room. People were still moving. Ellis was tightening his thermos. Adrian was closing the supply cabinet. Marcus was checking his radio. Beck was slicing bread. Harlan sat near the fire. No one appeared to be in charge of all of it, yet the place continued. Travis looked at Morrow. Don't get attached. The shepherd started down the steps. Travis followed. He had completed the assessment. He had given his answer. That should have been enough. But as Northstar's yellow porch light came on behind him in the early winter dusk, Travis found himself thinking not about what the building needed. He was thinking about how many people already believed it was worth showing up for. The cold arrived before the next storm. For 3 straight mornings, Silverpine woke beneath clear skies and temperatures low enough to make metal complain. Truck doors froze to their seals, diesel engines turned over reluctantly, exhaust hung in pale columns above parking lots, and every exposed surface seemed to hold the same hard blue light. Travis Keene spent the first morning at Northstar because the backup generator had developed a fuel pressure problem. He returned the second because the radio repeater had begun dropping signal whenever the temperature fell below 10 degrees. On the third day, Marcus called about the heater in the garage. By the end of the week, Travis had driven Old Lantern Road so many times that Morrow stopped lifting his head at the orange posts. Travis noticed this and disliked what it implied. He had not agreed to stay. That distinction remained important, even if no one else seemed interested in it. Northstar had simply become the place where one technical problem led naturally to another. A repaired generator exposed a load imbalance. A reliable repeater made the weak call-out procedure impossible to ignore. Fixing the garage heat meant someone had to decide who was responsible for keeping the snowcat fueled, inspected, and ready. Machines were easy. Systems were people wearing machinery as an excuse. That was the part Travis had tried to avoid. On the sixth day, Naomi placed a fresh stack of forms beside his coffee. He stared at them. "No. You haven't read them. I recognize paper. They're volunteer duty sheets." "No." Naomi pulled out a chair opposite him. "Then tell me who is on call tomorrow night." Travis looked toward Marcus. Marcus suddenly became fascinated by the snow outside. "Owen?" The electrician was rewiring a junction box and did not turn around. "Not my department." Beck, carrying a pot from the kitchen, said, "I can feed whoever figures it out." Adrian smiled without looking up from the medical cabinet. Travis looked at Harlan. The old man sat at a desk sorting decades of maintenance notebooks into piles. Harlan smiled, too pleasantly. Travis knew a trap when he saw one. He picked up the duty sheets. 3 weeks. Naomi nodded. 3 weeks. That is not a negotiation. No. After that, you find somebody else. Understood. Harlan coughed into one hand. It sounded suspiciously like laughter. Travis built the new structure because he could not stand watching the old one fail. He told himself there was no deeper reason. Marcus took responsibility for vehicles, fuel, traction gear, and road access readiness. Naomi controlled communications, emergency contact trees, weather alerts, and call-outs. Owen owned electrical systems and generator load testing. Adrian took medical supplies, animal care, and shelter intake procedures. Beck organized food, coffee, blankets, and a rotating supply list with businesses in Silver Pine. That left Harlan. Harlan wanted to remain responsible for everything else. Travis crossed the phrase out. There is no everything else. There is always everything else. Then we define it. Harlan leaned forward. What exactly do you want me to do? Historical records, local route knowledge, volunteer orientation. Harlan stared at him. You want me to give tours. I want you to stop replacing breakers with whatever you find in a drawer. I've never done that. Owen called from across the room. Close enough. Harlan ignored him. I've run this place since before you knew where Silver Pine was. And that's part of the problem. The room quieted. Travis had not meant to make the sentence sharp, but he did not take it back. Harlan folded his arms. You think I'm the problem now? I think you built a system that depends on you knowing everything. Because for years I did know everything. And what happens when you don't? Harlan's eyes hardened. You replace me. No, that's what this is. That's exactly what this is not. Travis lowered his voice. You're trying to preserve Northstar by making yourself impossible to remove from it. For several seconds, Harlan said nothing. Then he gave a small, humorless smile. Interesting advice.
Travis frowned. Meaning, coming from you, I don't follow. That is the problem. Harlan stood slowly. You divide every job, assign every role, write every procedure. Yes. But who approves the final plan? Travis said nothing. Who checks the snowcat after Marcus checks it? Travis's jaw tightened. Who tests Owen's generator test? That's verification. Who rereads Naomi's call sheet? That's quality control. Harlan nodded. Of course. Travis could hear the accusation now.
He disliked it because it was accurate enough to be inconvenient. Harlan picked up a stack of old route logs. You don't trust people either, Travis. That's not true. You trust them to do exactly what you told them. That's called organization. You trust them right up until the part where you might not be the last person standing between success and failure. The room had gone completely still. Even Beck stopped moving dishes. Travis felt heat rise behind his neck. He looked toward Harlan. You want to turn this into psychology? Find somebody else. Harlan shrugged. You started it. Then he carried the route logs into the archive room. Travis watched him go. Morrow lifted his head from beside the fireplace. The German shepherd looked at Travis. Travis pointed at him. Don't. Morrow lowered his head again. The first real test came 12 days into the 3-week arrangement. A light snow had begun before noon. By 3, the wind strengthened from the northwest, pushing loose powder across the road in pale ribbons. Naomi was checking weather data when Marcus's radio cracked. North unit hasn't checked in. Marcus looked up immediately. Who? Daniel Crest. That got everyone's attention. Daniel was 57, a veteran road maintenance operator who had worked Silver Pine County routes for almost 25 years. He was reliable enough that a missed check-in meant something was wrong before anyone said it aloud. Marcus reached for his radio. Last contact? Naomi checked the log. 210, North Spur inspection? Vehicle? County maintenance pickup? Chains fitted? Travis was already standing. Which route? Marcus pointed toward the wall map. Old service road above Aspen Cut. Travis looked outside. The snowfall itself was not severe. The wind was the problem. North-facing openings had begun disappearing behind blowing snow, and visibility could collapse quickly in the open stretches.
I'll take the snowmobile. Naomi turned. No. Travis pulled his gloves from the shelf. Snowcat is slower. It is also enclosed. He could be half frozen before we crawl up there. Or you could disappear in a whiteout on a snowmobile. I know the route. Harlan, standing beside the map, gave him a look. Travis ignored it. Marcus stepped closer. Let's take the cat. Too slow. 20 minutes slower. That matters? Naomi moved between Travis and the equipment rack. We do this by the procedure you wrote. Procedure assumes normal conditions. So now the first emergency is where we stop using it? Travis's patience snapped. Naomi, no. He stepped around her, not roughly, but decisively. He reached for the snowmobile keys. Morrow. The shepherd did not move. Travis looked back. Morrow stood beside Marcus, tail still, ears forward. Morrow, come. The dog looked directly at him, did not move. Travis felt something shift in the room. Marcus said nothing at first. That made it worse. Morrow! Still nothing. The shepherd was not afraid, not confused. He had simply chosen not to follow. Marcus finally spoke. You've spent almost 2 weeks teaching us not to turn one problem into 2. Travis looked at him. Marcus's expression held no challenge, only fact. If Daniel is sheltered, speed matters less than getting there intact. We don't know he's sheltered.
No. Then... Harlan's voice came from the map. There's an old survey cabin. Everyone turned. Harlan traced a route north of Aspen Cut. Not on current county maps, built when the forestry crew still used that spur. Naomi stepped closer. Condition? Ugly, but roof held last time I saw it. When? Harlan hesitated. 4 winters ago. Travis studied the terrain. The cabin sat beyond a narrow bend sheltered from prevailing northwest wind. If Daniel's truck had become disabled near the upper cut, a veteran road worker might know enough to leave it and move toward cover.
Marcus pointed to a lower access line. Snowcat can reach here. Harlan nodded. Then foot travel from there if you need it. Naomi was already assigning roles. Owen, repeater stays up. On it. Adrian, warm room ready. Hypothermia kit. Adrian closed the veterinary cabinet. 10 minutes. Beck, hot fluids. Already happening. Naomi looked at Travis. Marcus drives. Travis almost argued, then looked at Morrow. The shepherd remained beside Marcus. Something in Travis loosened, not surrender, something stranger. Permission. Fine, he said. Marcus held out the snowcat keys. No heroics. Travis gave him a hard look. You say that again, I'm driving. Marcus smiled. There he is. The snowcat left Northstar 20 minutes later. Marcus drove. Travis sat beside him with the route map, radio, and binoculars. Morrow rode behind them. The dog had finally come once the plan was settled. Travis noticed that too. They moved north through thickening white.
The snowcat was slower than the snowmobile would have been. Travis hated every mile of it. But the heated cab kept their visibility tools clear, the radio stable, and the engine predictable. Naomi's voice came through the speaker every 5 minutes. Northstar to Cat 1, signal check. 5 by 5, Marcus replied. At Aspen Cut, they found tire marks disappearing beneath blown powder. No vehicle. Another quarter mile brought them to the maintenance truck. Driver's door closed, engine dead. Daniel was not inside. Travis climbed down. Snow struck his face sideways. Morrow lowered his nose immediately, but Travis stopped himself from turning the dog loose. They checked the cab first. Emergency pack missing, good. Snowshoes gone, better. Marcus pointed toward the tree line. There. Faint tracks. They followed, not fast, correctly. That distinction stayed with Travis. Harlan guided them over the radio from Northstar. Look for a split pine above the creek bed. Marcus spotted it first. Then, the cabin. A low timber structure almost swallowed by snow. Travis reached the door. It opened inward after one hard shove. Daniel Crest sat on the floor near an old iron stove. Alive, cold, angry. About damn time! Travis laughed despite himself. Daniel had twisted an ankle when the truck slid into a frozen rut. He had abandoned the vehicle before the wind worsened, followed the old spur, and reached the survey cabin. He had used the emergency stove but could not get his handheld radio to reach the repeater from inside the hollow. No dramatic rescue was required, no race against death. They wrapped the ankle, gave him warm fluid, and moved him carefully back to the snowcat. Marcus handled the transport. Morrow sat against Daniel's boots for the return ride. Travis did not interfere. Northstar was bright when they came back. Adrienne took Daniel immediately. Owen reported that the repeater had remained stable. Naomi logged the entire operation. Beck handed Marcus coffee before he had removed his gloves. Harlan stood near the map, pencil behind his ear. No one cheered. Nobody told Travis he had saved anyone. That was strangely satisfying. Daniel was safe because Harlan remembered a cabin, because Naomi kept communications organized, because Owen kept the repeater powered, Because Marcus knew the equipment. Because Adrian had the warm room ready. Because Beck had fluids waiting. Because Travis had gone. But not alone. Later, when the lodge quieted, Travis stood by the garage door watching snow sweep across the yard. Marcus came beside him. "You okay?" "Yes." "That looked painful." "What?" "Following your own procedure." Travis almost smiled. "Go away." Marcus did. Morrow appeared a moment later and stood beside Travis. The dog leaned lightly against his leg. Travis rested one hand against Morrow's neck. Inside, Harlan was showing Naomi the location of 2 more old shelters that did not appear on current maps.
Owen was labeling a new circuit diagram. Adrian was checking Daniel's ankle. Everyone was doing something. None of it depended completely on Travis. He expected that to bother him. Instead, what he felt was relief. Small, unfamiliar, but real. For the first time since arriving at Northstar, Travis understood that being responsible did not always mean holding every part of the outcome in his own hands. Sometimes responsibility meant trusting that somebody else would still be there when you let go. And for once, nothing fell apart. The morning after Daniel Crest came back safely, Northstar felt different. Not quieter. If anything, there were more voices than usual. Marcus had come in early to check the snowcat after the previous day's run. Owen was already in the garage with a meter in one hand and a pencil tucked behind one ear. Naomi had spread weather printouts across the long table. Beck was arguing with someone on the phone about whether 6 loaves of bread counted as enough for a weekend storm. But the place no longer felt improvised to Travis. It had worked. Not perfectly, not elegantly, but everyone had done what they were supposed to do, and Daniel had come home without anyone turning the situation into something bigger than it was. That should have satisfied Travis. Instead, it left him with a question he had spent most of the night avoiding. Why did any of them care this much? He found Harlan near the back hallway, carrying 2 old binders under one arm. "Got a minute?" Harlan stopped. "That depends." "On what?" "Whether you're about to reorganize me again?" "I'm not." "Then I'm suspicious." Travis leaned against the wall. "Why Northstar?" Harlan studied him. Travis clarified. Not the practical answer. Not stranded drivers, not weather, not road access. He glanced toward the common room. "Why this place?" Harlan was quiet for a few seconds. Then he shifted the binders into his other arm. "Come downstairs." The archive room was not what Travis expected. He had imagined shelves of maintenance logs, inspection reports, invoices, maybe some old road maps. Those were there, but they occupied only one wall. The rest of the room was filled with cardboard boxes, dozens of them, some new, some soft at the corners from age. Most were labeled by year in Harlan's compact handwriting. Travis stood in the doorway. "What is all this?" Harlan switched on a hanging bulb. "People." "That is a concerning answer." Harlan set the binders down. "Open one." Travis chose a box marked 2003. Inside were postcards, handwritten notes, old photographs, a broken keychain, a pair of knitted gloves, and several Polaroids with dates written along the white borders. He picked up one photograph. A younger Harlan stood beside the fireplace upstairs. His beard was still dark in places. The lodge looked rougher then, with unfinished shelving and a different set of couches. Beside him stood a heavy-set man with dark hair and a thick brown mustache. Travis looked at the face again. "Ellis?" Harlan smiled slightly.
Before the gray. The date beneath the photograph read February 2003. Travis turned it over. On the back, someone had written, "Stayed one night. Needed more than sleep." No signature. Travis looked at Harlan. "You wrote that?" "No." "Ellis?" "Ask him." As if summoned by the question, a truck engine rumbled outside. Harlan looked toward the ceiling. Convenient. Ellis came down to the archive room 10 minutes later, carrying his dented steel thermos. He stopped when he saw the photograph in Travis's hand. For once, the easy humor left his face. "Haven't seen that in years." Travis handed it over. Ellis looked younger in the picture than Travis had expected. Not just physically, less settled, as if he had been holding himself wrong inside his own body. 23 years ago, Ellis said. Harlan corrected him. Nearly. Ellis gave him a look. Still annoying. Consistent. Ellis sat on an old wooden crate. For a while, he said nothing. Travis did not press. That seemed important. Finally, Ellis rubbed one thumb along the rim of his thermos. "I was running freight out of Spokane back then. Married 16 years. He paused. Thought that counted for something permanent. The room stayed still. I got a call outside Missoula. My wife said she was done. No bitterness. That surprised Travis more than anger would have. She wasn't cruel. I wasn't innocent. We'd been miserable long enough that the truth should have felt like relief. Ellis looked at the photograph. It didn't. A storm had closed the highway that evening. Ellis had been rerouted toward Northstar with half a dozen other stranded drivers. I remember everybody else talking about weather, chains, road reports, football. He gave a small laugh. I couldn't understand how the world had the nerve to keep discussing normal things. Travis knew that feeling. Not the divorce, the offense of ordinary life continuing. Ellis glanced at Harlan. This idiot brought me coffee. Harlan shrugged. You looked cold. I was indoors. You still looked cold. Ellis smiled, but it did not last. I sat beside that fireplace until sunrise. What did Harlan say? Travis asked. Nothing useful. Harlan nodded. Accurate. No advice, no speech, didn't tell me it would get better. Ellis looked back at Travis. He just let me sit there. The sentence landed softly. That was what made it stay. Ellis rested both hands on the thermos. Sometimes a place doesn't save your life. He paused. It just keeps you from quitting on that particular day. No one spoke afterward. There was nothing clean to add. Travis looked down at the photograph again. Northstar had not fixed Ellis's marriage. It had not reversed anything. It had simply given him a room where he did not have to decide what came next until morning. Travis found that harder to dismiss than rescue. The archive boxes changed after that. They stopped looking like clutter. Beck came downstairs later carrying a tray of mugs and caught Travis reading a postcard from 2011. You found the embarrassing museum. Harlan says it's history. Harlan says canned beans from 1998 are inventory. From the shelves, Harlan called, Those were thrown out. After I threatened you. Beck put the tray down. Travis held up a photograph of her standing beside an enormous stock pot. She was younger, but unmistakable. What was this? Beck looked at it. The humor in her face softened. That winter after Paul died. Travis knew enough not to ask who Paul was. She told him anyway. My husband. The room changed again. He'd been sick a while. People kept bringing food to my house afterward. She shook her head. Worst kindness in the world when you can't stand being in your own kitchen. One night, unable to sleep in the silence of her house, Beck drove to Northstar and made stew for a group of stranded utility workers. One pot turned into 3 nights. She folded her arms. I didn't come here because they needed dinner. Why did you come? Because I needed people to complain about the salt. That sounded like Beck. She smiled. Sometimes grief needs a job. Then she picked up the tray and went upstairs. Travis watched her leave. Another answer. Not the same as Ellis's,
but close enough to form a pattern. By late afternoon, the others had stories too. Owen had first come to Northstar at 21, not as an electrician, but as a broke apprentice with more confidence than skill. An older volunteer named Frank Milner had taught him how to trace a bad circuit without guessing and praying. He made me redo the same outlet 4 times, Owen said. Sounds charming, Travis replied. He was unbearable. A pause. Best electrician I ever knew. Naomi admitted she had once slept 16 straight hours in an upstairs bunk after a 30-hour winter rescue operation. I woke up with 1 boot still on. Marcus asked, why 1? I don't remember. Adrian told Travis about a blizzard 7 years earlier when 3 lost dogs were brought to Northstar after their owners had been evacuated separately.
the garage was warmer than the county holding area. So you turned it into a kennel. For 48 hours, Harlan said. It smelled terrible. Adrian smiled. They were alive. Morrow moved between the people as the stories surfaced. He did not understand any of them. That seemed to be part of the point. In the archive room, he sniffed a folded wool scarf, then sneezed hard enough to make Beck laugh from the stairs. Harlan watched the dog. Dogs have always been easier guests. Travis glanced at him. How so? They don't need your resume. Morrow nosed another box. Harlan continued. They don't care why you were late, why you left, why you came back, whether you made a mess of things before you walked through the door. He looked at Travis. They just decide what you are right now. Travis looked away. That was too close to something he had no interest in naming. That evening, the lodge emptied slowly. Marcus left first. Naomi drove back to the county office.
Adrian took a late call from the clinic. Beck packed the remaining food and threatened Harlan with consequences if he tried to eat only crackers. Ellis headed west before the roads iced over. Eventually, only Travis, Harlan, and Morrow remained. The fire had burned low. Outside, snow began falling in thin, dry flakes. Harlan sat at the long table with a stack of old letters in front of him. Travis stayed across the room. He should have left. Instead, he asked, "Why keep all of it?" Harlan looked at the boxes. "Because people leave." The answer was so direct that Travis had no response. Harlan tapped one of the letters. "Sometimes they come back. Sometimes they don't." He leaned back. "But if a place mattered to someone once, I thought it should remember." Travis looked toward the dark window. "And if the place goes away?" Harlan did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice had changed. Quieter. "It will eventually." Travis looked at him. Harlan's face seemed older in the low light. Not weaker, just less defended. "I used to think that was what scared me." "Northstar closing?" Harlan shook his head. "No." He looked toward the archive door. "I'm afraid it'll work without me." Travis frowned.
Harlan gave a faint, tired smile. Pathetic, isn't it? No. It is a little. He rubbed his hands together. For years I told myself I was protecting the place. A pause. Maybe some of the time I was protecting my position in it. Travis said nothing. Harlan continued. If Owen can fix the electrical system without me, Naomi can run communications without me, Marcus can manage vehicles without me. He looked around the room. What am I? The question was not dramatic. That made it worse. Travis sat down opposite him. You're Harlan. Very inspiring. You asked. Harlan smiled briefly, then the smile disappeared. I don't know who I am here, if I'm not the person everyone needs. The fire cracked softly. Morrow came over and lowered himself between the two men. Travis looked at him, then at Harlan. There it was, the shape of the thing he had resisted since the first day. Not similarity, opposition. Harlan had spent years making himself indispensable because he feared what remained if people stopped needing him. Travis had spent years making himself temporary because he feared what would happen if they did. One man held on too tightly, the other left too early. Both called it responsibility. Travis rested his forearms on the table. You know what the annoying part is? Harlan looked at him. You're not the only one doing it wrong. Harlan's expression changed. Not victory, recognition. Neither man said more. They did not need to. Outside, the snow gathered quietly on the orange posts leading back toward the road. Inside, Northstar held no emergency that night. No one needed rescuing, no machinery failed, no phone rang. And yet Travis understood something he had missed until then. Some people came through Northstar because weather had stopped them. Others came because life had. The place did not always send them home. Sometimes it simply gave them enough time to decide where home might be next. By the third week of February, Northstar had become quieter in the mornings. Not emptier, quieter. The frantic repairs were mostly finished. The electrical panel no longer made Owen swear under his breath every time someone plugged in a space heater. The radio repeater held steady through cold snaps. Marcus had written actual maintenance dates on the snowcat instead of relying on memory. Beck's food schedule was taped beside the kitchen door in handwriting large enough for everyone to read. Even Harlan had stopped moving tools after someone else put them away. Mostly. Travis noticed the change because Northstar had begun to feel less like a problem waiting to fail and more like a place with rhythm. That should have made leaving easier. Instead, the opposite was happening. His 3-week agreement had almost expired. He had started counting down the days without telling anyone. Then the insurance engineer arrived. Her name was Lydia Shaw, 53. A regional risk assessor from Helena, with silver-brown hair cut short above the collar of a dark winter coat. She carried 2 hard cases, a tablet, and the calm expression of someone whose job required disappointing people without making it personal. She shook Travis's hand once. Keene? Yes. You wrote the revised operating procedures? Most of them. Good. I have questions. That was how the morning began. No speech, no ceremony, just questions. Backup load capacity, emergency lighting, heating redundancy, volunteer coverage, shelter occupancy, fire extinguisher inspection, communication failure procedure, who had authority to suspend operations, who logged overnight guests, who checked fuel levels, who made the final call when the road became too dangerous to use. Travis answered what he knew. Naomi answered the rest. Harlan stayed mostly quiet. That alone told Travis how much had changed. 3 weeks earlier, Harlan would have interrupted every second answer. Now he stood near the kitchen with a mug in his hand and let other people explain the place he had helped build. Lydia spent almost 4 hours walking through Northstar. She tested lights, checked the generator enclosure, inspected the bunk rooms, asked Owen to demonstrate the transfer sequence, had Marcus start the snowcat, requested copies of volunteer schedules, reviewed Naomi's communication logs. She even asked Adrian why veterinary supplies were stored beside human medical equipment. Adrian answered, "Because stranded people often arrive with animals, and frightened animals create additional risk if nobody plans for them." Lydia nodded. "Good answer." Adrian looked at Travis afterward. "I like her." "You like anyone who approves labeled storage." "Correct." By early afternoon, the inspection was over. Everyone gathered around the long table. Harlan remained standing. Travis knew why. Sitting made waiting feel too much like waiting. Lydia set her tablet down. "You've made substantial improvements." Marcus exhaled. Owen did not. He knew that sentence had a second half. Lydia continued. "If I were evaluating only the immediate safety of this facility, my report would be positive." Harlan's hands tightened around his mug. "But?" Travis asked. "There are 3 issues preventing me from recommending full renewal for next winter under the current operating model." She raised one finger. "First, permanent backup power." Owen leaned forward. "The current generator is functional." "It is, but the load test shows insufficient margin for prolonged winter occupancy if the primary system fails." A second finger. "Second, consistent overnight staffing." Naomi nodded slowly. "We still have gaps." "Yes." A third finger. "And minimum operating reserve." That silenced the room. Travis glanced at Harlan. The old man looked down at the table. "How much?" Beck asked. Lydia gave the number. No one reacted immediately. It was not impossible. That made it worse. Impossible numbers could be dismissed. This one was simply too large for the people currently carrying Northstar. Lydia folded her hands. "You don't need to solve everything today, but the renewal recommendation requires evidence that these 3 items have a credible path to completion." "What kind of evidence?" Naomi asked. "Committed equipment, documented staffing, verified operating funds." "And if we can't?" Harlan said. Lydia looked at him directly. "Northstar can continue as a private lodge or volunteer space, subject to local rules, but it should no longer be referenced as a supplemental winter shelter in county emergency planning." Harlan nodded once. It looked like acceptance. Travis knew better. For Harlan, being removed from the emergency map was not administrative. It was the difference between Northstar existing and Northstar mattering in the way he understood. Lydia packed her tablet. "I'll give you 10 days before I finalize the recommendation." Then she left. The front door closed. Nobody spoke. Harlan set his coffee down. "Well," Beck looked at him. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Say something noble and stupid?" "I wasn't going to." "You had the face." Harlan almost smiled. Almost. Then he looked around the room. "We did what we could." Travis heard it immediately, the past tense. Marcus did too. 10 days is not 0. "We need a generator," Harlan said. Marcus answered, "Maybe." "Overnight coverage." Naomi said, "That can be built." "And money." No one replied. Harlan gave a small shrug. "There it is." Travis looked at him.
You're quitting? Harlan's expression hardened. I'm being realistic. That's interesting. Don't start. I've heard you call a lot of bad ideas responsibility. Haven't heard you call surrender realism before. Harlan pushed his chair back. What exactly do you suggest? Travis opened his mouth. Nothing came.
That irritated him more than Harlan's question. He could repair the generator problem. Maybe. He could design the staffing rotation. Probably. The money was different. Northstar did not need a clever mechanic. It needed people. A lot of them. And for once, Travis had no technical solution. Naomi closed her folder. I do. Everyone turned. She looked at Harlan. We ask. Harlan frowned. For what? Help. The words sat in the middle of the room. Harlan's expression changed as though Naomi had proposed stealing a bank. No. Beck laughed once. Of course. Harlan looked at her. What? You'd rather freeze than say you need something? That isn't true. Owen leaned back. It is extremely true. Naomi ignored them. We have records of past guests, businesses that have supported us, road crews, search volunteers, trucking groups, local contractors. Harlan shook his head. We are not begging. I didn't say begging. You're talking about telling people Northstar can't support itself. Yes. That sounds very close. Naomi's voice stayed level. Then maybe that's part of the problem. Harlan looked offended. Travis said nothing. He understood both sides. He hated asking for help too. That made it easier to see. Naomi continued. We don't tell people a sad story, we tell them the truth. Northstar wants to remain an emergency shelter next winter. These are the things required. If the place has value, people can decide whether they want to support it. And if they don't? Then we know. That was the part Harlan feared. Not rejection, proof. If nobody responded, then perhaps the place really had reached the end of its useful life. Travis watched him. For years, Harlan had made himself indispensable, partly because it protected him from ever testing whether Northstar mattered without him. Naomi was proposing exactly that test. Harlan looked toward the archive room, then at the fireplace, then finally at Morrow, who was asleep beneath the table and completely unconcerned with institutional funding. Fine, Harlan said. Naomi waited. Fine what? Harlan glared at her. Ask. The notice went out that evening. Naomi wrote it. Travis read it twice. Harlan tried to rewrite half of it and was stopped. It was not emotional. No photographs of Harlan in the snow, no story about Travis finding him, no mention of sacrifice, just facts. Northstar Winter House had provided winter shelter and support for nearly 4 decades. To remain part of the county's emergency reference system next winter, it needed 3 things: reliable backup power, expanded volunteer coverage, and operating support. Anyone willing to contribute equipment, labor, services, or time could contact Naomi. The final line was Beck's suggestion. If Northstar has ever given you a place to stop, this is a chance to help keep the light on for someone else. Harlan complained that it was sentimental. No one changed it. For the first 24 hours, almost nothing happened. 1 email, 2 phone calls. A retired mechanic volunteered for 1 overnight shift per month. Harlan said nothing. The second day was worse. Snow fell all afternoon. Travis repaired a door closer and tried not to watch Naomi's phone. By evening, Harlan had begun sorting old archive boxes again. Travis recognized the behavior, preparing for an ending. Then, just before 8 the next morning, the first semi arrived. Ellis Boone stepped down from the cab. Behind him came a second tractor trailer, then a pickup, then another. Travis walked on to the porch.
"What is this?" Ellis held up his dented thermos. "You asked." "I didn't. Naomi did." Behind Ellis, two men opened the back of the second truck. Inside were 6 boxed radio units. Ellis nodded toward them. "Drivers Association had emergency equipment funds. I made some calls." "You bought those?" "No."
Which is why this feels better. Marcus came outside, then Naomi, then Harlan. Ellis pointed at the boxes. 6 radios, new enough that Owen can't insult them. From inside, Owen shouted, "I can insult anything." Ellis smiled. "That's what I told them." The morning accelerated from there. Owen's electrical supplier agreed to reduce the price of transfer equipment if Pike Electrical provided installation labor. Marcus discovered the county had an approved spare generator in storage scheduled for decommissioning from another facility. It could not simply be donated, but a transfer agreement could place it at Northstar for emergency use. Beck called every restaurant owner within 15 miles and built a rotation so no one kitchen carried the food burden alone. Adrian recruited veterinarians, groomers, kennel workers, and experienced dog handlers into a small pet support roster. By afternoon, the Northstar parking area had become crowded. Not with donors posing for photographs,
With work. A man Travis had never seen before brought 2 cords of split firewood. A woman repaired a cracked upstairs window frame because, according to her, "I owe this place for 2014. 3 utility workers volunteered alternating overnight shifts. An older couple dropped off bedding. A mechanic from west of town offered 1 Saturday each month to inspect the snowcat. Near sunset, a woman in her 50s came through the door, carrying 1 cardboard box. She had no crew, no check, no equipment trailer, just a box. Beck took it from her. Inside were winter gloves, about 30 pairs, new, different sizes. The woman looked around the common room. "I stayed here 17 years ago." Harlan stepped closer. "What happened?" She shrugged. "Car broke down." "That's all?" "That was enough." She looked at the gloves. "I remember mine were soaked." Then she smiled, embarrassed by the simplicity of the gesture. "I figured someone else's might be too." She left before anyone could ask more. Harlan stood beside the box for a long time. Travis watched him. The old man did not direct anyone, did not reorganize the gloves, did not ask where they should be stored. He simply stood in the middle of the noise and watched people carry Northstar without him. And then something changed in his face. His shoulders lowered, not from defeat, from relief. Harlan smiled, a real one. Travis had never seen that particular expression on him before. It looked like a man discovering that being unnecessary in one moment did not make him useless. 8 days after Lydia Shaw's inspection, she returned. This time the evidence was waiting. The county generator transfer documentation, electrical installation commitment, a full 12-week overnight volunteer schedule, food rotation, pet support roster, operating pledges sufficient to meet the required reserve. Lydia reviewed everything. She tested the generator, asked questions, checked signatures, then stood beside the long table.
"I'll recommend renewal." Nobody cheered immediately. They had all become too accustomed to bad news following good sentences. Lydia smiled. That was the good part. Marcus raised both hands. Beck started clapping first, then everyone did. Harlan sat down. Travis saw his eyes close for 1 second. Only one. The meeting happened after Lydia left. Travis thought it was about the final paperwork. Instead, Naomi asked him to stay. Marcus was there,
Owen, Adrian, Beck, two other members of Northstar's community board whom Travis knew only casually. Harlan sat at the end of the table. Naomi slid a folder toward Travis. He did not touch it. "What is this?" "A job." "No," Beck laughed. "You should at least hear the salary before saying no." Travis looked at Naomi. She continued, "Winter Operations Director." He stared at her. "Northstar doesn't have one." "It would." Marcus leaned back. "Vehicle operations stay mine. Owen keeps electrical." "Naomi communications," Travis said.
Yes. Adrian medical.
"Yes." "Then what exactly am I directing?"
The space between all of it.
That answer was annoyingly good. Naomi opened the folder. Salary, health insurance, seasonal housing in the cottage behind the lodge, a dedicated workshop for equipment maintenance, authority to coordinate operations without replacing the people already responsible for their areas. Travis looked at Harlan. "You did this?" Harlan shook his head. "No."
Come on.
"I didn't." Naomi said, "He doesn't have the authority." Travis looked around the table. Harlan leaned back. "Northstar belongs to a community trust." "You founded it." "Helped." "You've run it for 38 years." "That never made it mine." Travis looked again at the offer. No inheritance, no property transfer, no old man handing him keys to a secret estate. The cottage was housing attached to the job, not a gift. The workshop belonged to Northstar, the salary came from the operating budget, the decision came from a board.
It was almost disappointingly ordinary. And because of that, it frightened him more. A gift could be refused, an inheritance could be signed away. This was different. People had watched him, worked beside him, argued with him, seen him fail to trust them, seen him learn. And they were asking him to stay anyway. Naomi closed the folder. "We don't need an answer today." Travis hated that, too. Pressure would have given him something to resist. Instead, she gave him choice. He looked through the window toward the cottage behind the lodge. Small, simple. Snow piled along the roofline. Morrow was outside with Marcus, moving through fresh snow near the garage. Travis imagined his tools in that workshop, his coffee on that porch, his truck parked in the same place every morning, people knowing where to find him. That last thought tightened something in his chest. He had spent years building a life with exits, short contracts, independent work, a house outside town. No one depending on tomorrow's version of him. Saying yes would change that. Not because Northstar would trap him, because he might stop wanting to leave. Travis put one hand on the folder. "I'll think about it." Harlan nodded. No disappointment. No persuasion. That mattered. Outside, Morrow saw Travis through the window. The shepherd stood still for a moment, then turned back toward Northstar instead of the road. Travis noticed. This time he did not call him. The next morning was clear enough to hurt the eyes. Snow lay hard and bright across Old Lantern Road, packed smooth by cold and the passage of plows. The orange route posts stood in clean intervals along the shoulder, each reflective band catching sunlight before disappearing around the next bend. Travis drove without music. Morrow sat beside him, alert but relaxed. Harlan rode in the back seat. This time there was no argument about equipment. He wore his mustard-brown parka, a reflective vest over it, new winter boots, and the burgundy knit cap Travis had first seen crooked on his head beneath a ponderosa pine. A radio was clipped securely to his chest. His metal-framed glasses sat straight on his nose. A wooden trekking stick rested against one knee.
Before leaving Silverpine, Harlan had filed the route with Naomi: expected return time, vehicle, radio frequency, exact destination. Marcus had even threatened to check on them personally if they missed a call.
Harlan had complained for nearly 5 minutes. Then he had written everything down. Travis noticed that too. Some changes announced themselves loudly. Others looked like an old man remembering to tell someone where he was going. They parked near the same section of road where Morrow had first pawed at the truck door weeks earlier. Travis stepped out. The air was still. No whiteout, no engine trouble, no one waiting for rescue. That made the place feel unfamiliar. Morrow jumped down and sniffed the snowbank. Harlan followed more slowly. "You remember the way?" Travis asked. "I remember getting it wrong." "That wasn't the question." "Yes." They started into the trees. The snow was shallower now, where wind had hardened the surface, and their progress was easier than it had been the first time. Travis still watched Harlan's pace. Not obviously, Harlan still noticed. "Stop checking my breathing." "I'm not." "You are. You're talking. Breathing seems fine." Harlan gave a dry laugh.
Morrow moved ahead through the pines. At one point he stopped at an old track beneath the snow, sniffed once, then kept moving. No urgency, no searching, just a dog walking through a place that had once mattered for a different reason. When they reached the ponderosa pine, Travis recognized it immediately. The trunk bent slightly away from the slope. One exposed root formed the shallow hollow where Harlan had sat against the bark. The snow there was untouched. Harlan stopped. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Travis looked back toward the road. Through gaps in the trees he could see one orange marker, then another farther off. A sequence. Not enough to tell someone exactly where life was going, enough to show that a way still existed. Harlan planted the trekking stick firmly beside him. "I knew." Travis turned. "Knew what?" "That I shouldn't have been out here alone." There was no humor in his voice now. Harlan looked at the tree rather than Travis. "I knew before I left the house." Travis waited. The weather was good, the route was familiar. I'd done it too many times to count. Harlan's mouth tightened. I told myself that was the same thing as being safe. It wasn't. No. Morrow came back and sat a few feet away. Harlan looked at him. "I wanted to know I could still do it." The admission was small, almost embarrassing in its simplicity. Travis understood why that made it harder to say. Do what? Be the man who could leave in the morning, walk the route, fix the markers, come back before dark? Harlan tapped the snow once with the end of the stick. I spent years being that man. And when you couldn't? I didn't know what replaced him. The cold air moved softly through the pine needles above them. Travis looked at the old man. Harlan had already said much of this at Northstar. But here, at the place where pride had nearly become consequence, it carried different weight.
You could have died proving something you already knew wasn't true.
Harlan nodded. Yes. Travis frowned.
You're agreeing too easily. I'm 79. I have to conserve energy. That pulled a laugh out of Travis, despite himself. Then the humor faded. He looked at Morrow. If he hadn't found you? Harlan followed his gaze. The German shepherd's black and gold coat stood stark against the snow. His left ear tilted slightly outward as he listened. Harlan took a long breath. I've thought about that. And? I think I misunderstood what I was trying to preserve. Travis waited.
Northstar was never supposed to prove I could keep doing everything. Harlan looked toward the road. It was supposed to make sure somebody had a place to reach. He adjusted his grip on the trekking stick. I kept confusing keeping the place alive with keeping myself necessary. Travis said nothing. Harlan smiled faintly.
My job wasn't to carry it forever.
What was your job?
To keep the door open long enough for somebody else to walk through.
That sentence stayed between them. Morrow stood and moved closer to Harlan. The old man rested one gloved hand briefly against the dog's neck. Then Harlan looked at Travis. Your turn. Travis shook his head. No, very convincing. I didn't come here for a confession. Neither did I. You literally just gave one. Occupational hazard of standing under meaningful trees. Travis looked away. The orange route markers showed faintly through the trunks. His whole adult life had been structured around exits. Some of that came from the service. A mission ended, a deployment ended, a team changed, orders changed. Then civilian life had offered him something that felt easier. Short jobs, repair calls, independent contracts, a workshop that belonged only to him. If something became complicated, he could finish what was necessary and leave before anyone confused reliability with permanence. He had called that freedom, the ability to go, the absence of obligations he had not chosen. And much of it had been freedom. But standing there, Travis began to see the other half of it. A life built entirely around exits eventually became a life in which no door was allowed to mean anything. Harlan watched him without speaking. Travis appreciated that. I got the offer yesterday. I know. Of course you do. Small town. I haven't answered. I know that too. Travis looked at him. Harlan shrugged. Naomi has a face. What kind? The kind that says she has paperwork waiting for somebody stubborn. Travis smiled once, then looked back toward the road. If I take it, I'm not doing what you did. Harlan's expression became serious. No. I mean it. I know. No system built around one person. Not me, not you. Not anybody. Good. If Marcus owns vehicles, I don't take vehicles back because I don't like the way he labels a fuel log. That will be difficult for you. If Naomi owns communications, I don't rewrite her call tree at midnight. Very difficult. If Owen owns electrical, he owns electrical. Now we're approaching fantasy. Travis looked at him. Harlan smiled. That's the right condition. Travis frowned slightly. The condition? If you accept. Travis did not answer, but something inside the decision had already moved. Not because Harlan convinced him, because Harlan didn't try. That mattered. They returned to Northstar shortly before noon. Naomi was at the long table reviewing a set of county integration forms. She looked up when Travis came through the door. You're back. That was the plan. Remarkable. Marcus was in the garage. Owen had half the electrical closet open. Beck was unloading bread into the kitchen. Adrian was sorting collapsible bowls onto the lower shelf of the new pet support cabinet. Northstar looked ordinary, busy, unimpressed by personal transformation. Travis preferred it that way. He removed his gloves. Naomi watched him. You have something to say? Yes. She put down her pen. Should I get the board? No. Why? Because this isn't dramatic. That has never stopped a board. Travis pulled out the chair opposite her. I'll take the job. Naomi's face did not change much. Her eyes did. Okay.
One condition.
Of course.
This place never gets built around one person again.
Naomi leaned back. You mean operationally?
I mean structurally. Travis counted off on his fingers. Defined ownership, backup roles, written procedures, mandatory handoffs. No one becomes the only person who knows how something works. Harlan walked in behind them. And if someone starts trying? Travis looked over. We annoy them until they stop. Harlan nodded.
Excellent policy. Naomi extended her hand. Winter Operations Director? Travis looked at it for a second, then shook. Winter Operations Director. Morrow, lying beneath the table, thumped his tail once. Nobody applauded. Travis was grateful. The following weeks changed Northstar in ways that were almost too small to notice day by day. Harlan took over historical records and volunteer orientation with surprising seriousness. He told new volunteers why certain route markers existed, where old shelters had once stood, and which mistakes the place had already made so nobody needed to repeat them. Marcus formalized vehicle checks and built a rotating maintenance schedule. Naomi integrated Northstar more fully into the county's winter response network without pretending it was something larger than it was. Owen completed the staged electrical upgrades and finally replaced enough old wiring that he stopped insulting the walls.
Adrian created a small pet care corner near the garage entrance. Slip leads, bowls, blankets, basic first aid, and a quiet partition for frightened animals. Beck established Wednesday night as Northstar Supper. Her rules were simple. If you were working, stranded, passing through, or too tired to cook, you ate. No speeches, no sign-up forms. Ellis continued his regular freight route. Whenever his schedule brought him through Silver Pine, the blue semi appeared in the Northstar lot. Sometimes he stayed 10 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. He always brought the same battered steel thermos. Travis moved into the cottage behind the lodge at the beginning of March. The move took 1 pickup load, 1 box of clothes, 3 crates of tools, a coffee maker, several books, a chipped enamel mug, and Morrow's expensive dog bed, which Morrow ignored from the moment Travis set it beside the cottage stove. You cost too much to sleep on floors, Travis told him. Morrow lay on the floor. Travis gave up. The old workshop in Silver Pine did not disappear overnight. Travis kept several private repair clients and gradually transferred the heavier equipment to Northstar's dedicated shop. What changed first was not his work. It was his mornings. He began waking to boot prints outside the lodge. A radio call from Naomi. Marcus cursing a frozen latch. Beck arriving with bread. Harlan already awake somewhere he had no business being awake that early. The sound of Northstar existing before Travis entered the room. For years, he had valued waking in a place where nobody needed anything from him. Now, unexpectedly, he valued something else. Knowing there were people nearby who could need something, and also knowing they did not need everything from him. There was a difference, a large one. One night, several weeks later, snow began falling softly over Silver Pine County. Not a storm, just winter taking its time. Travis finished late in the workshop after replacing a worn belt on the snowcat. He switched off the work lights, locked the side door, and crossed the yard toward the lodge. Warm light filled the windows. He stopped outside. Through the glass, Northstar looked almost exactly as it always had. Harlan sat across from Marcus at a chessboard, accusing him of cheating. Marcus was laughing too hard to defend himself. Beck carried a soup pot from the kitchen. Naomi stood near the radio desk, checking a weather update.
Adrian sat near the fireplace with a mug in both hands. The front door opened, and Ellis came in, stamping snow from his boots. Morrow lay in the middle of the room, not beside Travis, not beside Harlan. In the middle. His head rested on his front paws, amber eyes moving lazily from one person to another. Travis stood outside longer than necessary. Weeks earlier, he had found an old man under a tree and believed the event had been simple. Locate, warm, transport. Done. Instead, something impossible had happened afterward. Not impossible in the way people told stories about sudden wealth or miraculous luck. Something quieter. He had been offered work that mattered to him. A house that felt different from a place where he merely slept. People who knew when he was late. People who argued with him without fearing him. People who relied on him without placing their entire weight in his hands. A dog who had somehow understood the difference before any of them. Harlan had not given him property. There was no hidden fortune, no deed, no inheritance, no sealed box waiting in an attic. What Harlan had given Travis was far less tangible and much harder to walk away from. A doorway. That was all. A doorway into a place where Travis did not have to remain temporary. Headlights crossed the snow behind him. A car turned into the lot. Travis watched it stop unevenly near the porch. The driver stayed inside for several seconds. Morrow raised his head. Travis walked toward the vehicle. An adult man stepped out, bundled in a winter coat, looking tired and embarrassed. "Road's getting slick," the stranger said. "Someone told me this place was open." Travis looked toward the lodge. Warm light spilled onto the snow. Morrow had come to the doorway and stood waiting. Travis opened the door wider. He did not ask where the man had been, did not ask why he had waited so long before stopping, did not ask whether he planned to stay 5 minutes or all night. He simply stepped aside. "Come in." The man hesitated. Travis nodded toward the room. "There's space." The stranger walked past him into the warmth. Morrow moved aside to let him through. Travis remained at the threshold for one moment. Old Lantern Road stretched into darkness beyond the parking lot. Once, Travis would have looked toward it automatically, measured distance, weather, departure. This time he closed the door and did not look back. Sometimes, the greatest gift is not being rescued from the road, but discovering a place where we no longer have to keep walking alone. Travis learned that strength is not carrying everything by yourself. Sometimes it is trusting others enough to share the weight and choosing to stay when life finally gives you a place worth belonging to. If this story reminded you of a person, a place, or a moment that helped you find your way, share it in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more stories about loyalty, courage, and second chances, please subscribe to Valor and Paw Stories. May you find good people beside you, a warm light ahead of you, and the courage to recognize when you have already found your way home.